Facebook Live, here we are, face to face. Our Christian Minson at your disposal every week with Rythmia Life Advancement Center out in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. If you are tuning into the recording, always note that we have about 4 minutes worth of chit chat, just getting started. If you want to forward up to the 4-minute mark, you'll skip all that so you can get right to the content. If you're joining on, give me a thumbs up, give me a hello in the chat bar, all that good kind of stuff. Welcome as people come on. Our Christian Minson here, your catalyst for evolution and awakening. Ross, hey Ross from Florida, Bula, Kava Bars, and Sveta, hey, she's on. Dave Power, Ross, hey, Greg, hey, from Minneapolis. Lots of familiar names right out the gate. Hey, Dave Power. Welcome all. Some likes, some hearts. Get used to using those buttons so you can give me real-time feedback. Lynn is saying hi, hello. And here I am today. Today was, we entered into May, which is the beginning of the rainy season. Gosh, John, hey, how are you? Interviewed recently, many of us in Rythmia, so you want to put a link of where you can find those interviews in there. You will want to check that out, Kosh. So, Puriel, hello from Amsterdam, and welcome. So as I was saying, May is the beginning of the rainy season. It starts out relatively little. We still haven't had any rain yet, but this is the first sort of, we can call it overcast, but where the clouds are a little bit in front of the sun. It's dropped the temperature about 2 degrees, which I've appreciated today. But otherwise, things are pumping along. We're getting ready for the Taita Juanito next week. This week so far, we've had Luke Sellers. He's such a profound speaker and meditator, guides people through meditative processes. He's also a practitioner of Kriya Yoga, the same brand of meditation technique that I was taught through the lineage of Paramahansa Yogananda. So he's a brother of mine and doing some good things. Mary Alice, hello. Dave, static, check your mic. I'm not sure what that could be. Waiting for a few more people to show up. Got about half a minute. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and eliminate the mic altogether. Can you hear me now? This is what, oh, there we go. Can you hear me now? Yes, if you can hear me, say so. Yes, came. I'm not getting a sense. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Please let me know. And so, yeah, all right, good. Yes, you're back. All right. I'll have to check the microphone. We'll just do it free mic built in here. So that's, sometimes we just got to roll with punches. All right, welcome everybody to the Breathwork edition of Facebook Live. I'm your host this week, R. Christian Minson, the Director of Breathwork here at Rythmia Life Advancement Center for the last 1.5 years. I'm a transformational breath trainer and facilitator for the last 12 years, former monk of 10 years, speaker, author, and internet coach, and basically your catalyst for evolution and transformation. Here today to welcome you to our Friday edition of Facebook Live, talking today about emotional balancing. The emotional dimension of breath work is really what we're striving to explain today. How incredibly effective breathwork is at helping you to look at your emotions, to manage those emotions, and ultimately to balance them in a healthy way. So we can learn to have our emotions and not be controlled by them. So this is important because, well, there's multiple reasons why this is important. Emotions are basically, there's a dimension of our being that is important to the overall aspect of our overall well-being. We want the emotional dimension of our being to be in balance with the physical dimension, the mental, and ultimately the spiritual. And if any one of these dimensions is out of balance, it can throw your whole life off. And this emotional one seems to be where a lot of life's problems tend to develop through. Just as humans, that seems to be the way it is. Now, to say that they're life problems is probably to frame it negatively. To say that the emotional dimension is really where life's opportunities lie, where our challenges tend to be the strongest, but really where our opportunities lie. Because if these emotions are out of balance, too strong or too weak, they can wreak havoc on the quality of our life. But when they're in balance, they really serve to help us attune more to the intuitive faculties of your being. And this is where we're really striving to get more in touch with that inner dimension, that inner voice, and having a balanced emotional state is critical for getting in tune with that. Emotions, too, are really a valuable informational source. In fact, I would even say that emotions are more potent than our intellectual capacity. And I use the analogy often of internet service. Most of us have had experience with internet service, and you call up and you can get one kind of service or another. Some are faster than others. And let's say, these days you can get your service through a DSL cable, and in some places they've got fiber optic cable. So what's the difference? The DSL cable and the numbers may be a little bit off, but they're in relative perspective, they're fairly accurate. So DSL cable, you might be able to process, download up to 100 megabytes per second of information. That's as the information comes through, that you get 100 megabytes per second, and that's why if you're streaming something and there's breaks in the streaming, it's because it's not the fastest speed. That's pretty fast, but you can get a lot slower with the DSL cable. Anyway, this is like our intellectual capacity. Our intellectual capacity is very linear and relatively slow. It's whereas the emotional dimension of our being is like sending information down a fiber optic cable, where you can get like 100 gigabytes, 100 gigabytes per second. That's timesing to the I don't know. All right, my math's off today, but multiple factors of 10 more than 100 gigabytes. So all of this information can come to you at once, and probably all of us have experienced this on a very basic level. You go into a room, you go to a party, and as you walk in the door, your mind scans the scene, and it's looking, systematically everything. Is this a place I want to be? Who is that person? What are they doing? What is this environment? And it's trying to assess, right? The emotions, you walk into the room and immediately you get this feeling, I shouldn't be here, or this is a safe place, or whatever.
the emotions take that information in all at once and have the capacity to process it. Well, again, the mind is going in the linear way. So this is all true if, again, our emotions are in balance, if we have the capacity to be in touch with those feelings. And so this is an important part of why we're talking about this subject today. Get those emotions in balance, to give us full use of these deeper faculties that we have access to. All right, everybody's talking. Let's see. I was just watching a video you did on soul versus ego. Great, Jamie. That's why I reference that a lot, because that our soul versus ego question about how to tell when your soul is speaking to you versus how to tell when your ego is speaking to you. Very potent video. All right, and yeah, looks like Jamie put the URL to that one. So if anybody wants to follow up on that, find it in the comments. Gord Barrett joined. Gord's here this week, and he just got his miracle. So you can tune in tomorrow's edition of I Got My Miracle, and you'll see Gord, who's been on the chat. If you've been with me over the past few weeks, he's been regularly in the chat bar and getting excited about coming. He came this week. Went through the process just like everybody, kind of had some ups and downs, wasn't quite sure midweek, like many aren't, and then all of a sudden got the big enchilada on Wednesday night, and his life has changed. So you can hear all about that tomorrow. All right, Juan Carlos joined. So this is back to our point. The emotional dimension is important. Okay, so what is emotional balancing, and really what's the mechanics of this whole process? You might also hear this called emotional integration, emotional release, emotional catharsis. This is all part the same names for a similar process which breathwork helps facilitate. First of all, one of the other things I want to mention is that our emotions are like messengers, right? It's like every emotion we have is like a piece of mail that gets put in your mailbox. And if you imagine, taking this analogy, imagine how you deal with your emotions these days. If you get a happy emotion or a peaceful emotion or emotion of well-being, you're happy to open those letters, right? But if you've got an emotion of fear or anxiety or anger or something, maybe you avoid opening those letters. Now imagine that you get a bill in the mail, and that bill is akin to fear. And so instead of opening that bill, you hide it in the closet, and you throw it in the trash. You don't deal with it, right? Well, in 2 weeks, you find that your lights are shut off. And so this is a good analogy of, this bill, this letter of this emotion of fear came to you, and instead of opening it and finding out what the message was, hey, you owe $200 for your electricity, and then you could do something about it if you actually open it up. But instead, you chose not to open that, and you threw it in the garbage. Now you didn't get that message, right? You didn't get that vital information, and then your life suffers as a consequence. Your lights are turned out. You have to go through all this hassle. You might not get them on for a number of days. You have to go through all this credit stuff with the power company, all that. So each emotion basically has a message for us. It's important for us to learn to allow that emotion to come up, to express it, to feel it, so that we get that message, and then we can act and direct our lives correspondingly. Gordon saying, yeah, buddy, all right. So much love from Denver. Hey, Amanda. Ashton, can't wait to come. I want to learn to heal out. The emotional balance is so important, and you will get that here. Lord, everyone, Rythmia is the most beautiful place on earth. Words cannot describe the magic that happens here. If you've been called here, do yourself and the world a favor and get here. All right, that's Gord coming straight at you from his experience this week. That's a great analogy. Love it. Thanks, Riley. All right, so in the mechanics of this whole emotional thing, emotions are, as the word describes, emotion, right? E standing for energy, and then motion, energy and motion. Emotions are just energy and motion. They are created within us, and the whole thrust of their emotion is to be expressed. Now, the rub to this whole equation is, in that process, we have a choice whether we're going to say, yes, I allow that emotion to come out, I allow myself to feel it, or it's coming up and you say, I don't want to feel this right now, I don't know how to feel this, I'm scared to feel this, whatever, and we push that emotion back down. We store it. We start to lock it in the closet, or like Jerry says here, we seal them up in plastic bags, and we keep all these plastic bags of emotion stored in our being, and they build over time. Now, what's the harm in that? You say, oh, hey, I had an emotion, I didn't want to feel it, I stuffed it down, and now I don't have to feel it. Well, the great psychotherapist Sigmund Freud, who many of you probably know, one of the great quotes I like to attribute to him is that unexpressed emotions never die. They just reemerge in darker and uglier ways. So just because you've avoided feeling that emotion in that moment doesn't mean that you won't feel it later. And in fact, it sits there and starts to discolor your perceptions. It's like wearing glasses that have dirt on them, and everything you see is filtered through these dirty glasses. So the dirt might get in the way, and you might not see something critical. Or you look at a beautiful, pristine environment that's very inviting, but you see it through these dirty glasses, and it's saying, yuck, that environment's dirty. So you avoid it, and you end up missing the opportunity for something good in your life because you see it through that filter. So these emotions are the filters, the filter of fear, the filter of anxiety, the filter of anger. And we do or don't do things because of this filter, and that has most often negative consequences on the quality of our lives. So it's important to deal with these emotions because, again, they're energy in motion. So ultimately, their motion is to come out of this, and they will do that. They will do that in one of three ways, all right? Two of them aren't so healthy, and the third way is a much healthier way. The first way is that they'll start to leak out, right? And this is this is kind of the discoloration effect. You start to perceive things from that leaky anger or that leaky fear, and you don't get involved in that relationship because you're a little bit too skittish about it, or you don't take this opportunity, or don't go on that fun trip that everybody else goes on because there's too much baggage filtering your decision. Lost my place here. So we're learning how to express these emotions. So the first way is that they leak out, right? The second way then that they'll come out is the straw that breaks the camel's back approach, right? So as we mentioned, we store these emotions, but we don't usually do it once. We do it oodles of times, and we build the storehouse of emotion, which is like a pressure bomb, and it's building and building and building, and then the straw that breaks the camel's back. One little thing happens, and kabloom, the whole package blows. So it's like if you've been storing anger, and then you're in the supermarket with your cart, and somebody comes around the corner and bangs into you, and they're like, "Oh, sorry," and you're like, "Wah!" and you laser beam them into a crisp, and they turn into dust, and everybody looks around and says, "What did they do that was so bad?" And nothing really, right? They banged into you. It was a minor thing, but perhaps decades worth of anger just got unloaded on them. And you hear about this kind of stuff all the time in the media, where somebody's anger got the better of them, and it ends up causing great harm or even death to others or to themselves. So this kind of approach is very volatile and very risky. So the Zen Lin, she's on too, and she's here this week. And Diane, hey, Diana. So the third way that we can deal with these emotions, and the healthy way, is to siphon those emotions off. Now, with the straw that breaks the camel's back, I was talking about pressure building, and this leads to my pressure cooker analogy. Emotions are our life and our relationship to our emotions are like a pressure cooker. This is a great analogy because we need pressure in our lives. And just like a pressure cooker works, there's a certain amount of pressure that needs to cook the food that's inside the pressure cooker. And when the pressure gets too much, there's a little valve that pops out and pressure goes out and reduces to the adequate amount. Again, just like our lives, we need a certain amount of pressure, but as it starts to build, that can be detrimental. And so we need a pressure cooker valve. We need a valve to help siphon off some of this excess energy, this excess emotions. What's that valve? Your breath. All right. So through transformational breath, through this process of connected breathing, it acts as the pressure cooker valve. So as these emotions build, these go through this process. We bring those emotions to the surface and let them out, let them escape, let that gas out, let it leave your being. So the pressure of all that energy finally comes to a harmonious equilibrium. Okay, so this is great if you're feeling the build, but it's also important as we really get a handle on. And this comes, I've got another Facebook Live called Cope, Heal, and Thrive, I think, or the three phases of healing or something like that. And I'm really talking about coping, healing, and thriving. That, as we learn to first, as the pressure builds, we learn to cope with it by eliminating some of that pressure and bringing ourselves back to a present-day equilibrium. Then we can start the healing phase by catching up with that stuff and clearing out the past. So we can use the breath work as a way to manage the energy before it builds up too much. So instead of getting it super built and having to release that valve is periodically releasing. So we're always, again, at an equilibrium, an emotional balance. It's important to understand that balance is is on both ends. You can be too expressive in your emotions, or let's say you can have your emotions get the better of you, like they are in control of your life. And again, we hear all sorts of stories where people do crazy things because they're overly emotional, because their emotions blinded their reason. And again, we're looking for this balance. The flip side is true as well, though, that too little emotional expression can lead to, here we got, cold-hearted, the straight-ahead stoic, do things in a very rational manner, but have little consequence for the impact on people's feelings and people's lives. And you might get the narcissist or the selfish person or such that is less in tune with their emotions. So the spectrum, it goes out of balance in either way. We're looking for this golden middle point where we have a healthy relationship with the expression of our emotions, but they don't overtake us, and then they're in control. So another important thing to recognize is how breath and emotions work together. That breath, each emotion that we have has a corresponding breath pattern to it. So those emotions that we like, joy, peace, well-being, come with a deeper, more fluid breath pattern. Okay, it's deep, it's relaxed, and it's generally connected. We stay breathing. Those emotions that we don't like that much. Fear, anxiety, stress, so on, anger, tend to come with a shallower, more rapid breath pattern. This breath pattern actually puts us into our reptilian brain, and that's why it activates these emotions, the fight or flight emotions, anger, high adrenaline, all this stuff. So one starting point is when you have an emotion, check in immediately how you're breathing, because that emotion is going to cause you to breathe a certain way. And you probably notice, especially if you're holding your breath or you're breathing that very shallow. Now, what's great, and this is where the whole art and science of breathwork comes in, is that we can reverse engineer the process and say that the way we breathe can actually induce different emotional states. So let's say if you want to feel chronically anxious and stressed, just try breathing in this shallow manner for 5 or 10 minutes. And you will start to feel, stressed or anxious. On the flip side, if you want to feel more likely, happy, relaxed, peaceful, then start taking deeper, fluid, relaxed, and connected breaths. And watch how this calms your heart, this calms your nervous system, and it starts to bring you feelings of well-being. So this, in a nutshell, is how breathwork works. We're really working with a process, with a technique of breathing, a conscious breathing technique. Conscious meaning that we're aware of it. We're actually watching our breath rather than being unconsciously breathing, where we are breathing, but we don't actually know how or how effective it is. Conscious breathing, meaning the techniques is working with our breath in this process of respiration. And technique, conscious breathing technique means that a specific form of breathing, a specific way of breathing that helps make this thing work. So the technique here is a full breath, a free or relaxed breath, and a fluid breath, flowing, connected breathing. And by doing that for extended periods of time, we start to dredge up this old emotional energy, or we melt the plastic bags that these emotions are in, and the emotions bubble up to the surface. Now, this is probably the most critical part of the whole process, where the breath starts to come to or the emotions start to come to the surface. And here we're in this temporary space of re-experiencing those emotions. And I call this the most critical part because there's a place where you want to run, or you want to stop, you want to abort your mission, because you're feeling these emotions which you didn't want to feel the first time you felt them, and that's why you stuffed them down in the first place, right? So it's critical to stay with the feeling. The whole process of using breathwork to help balance your emotions is to start the breathing process, allow whatever bubbles up to be there without trying to push it away, without trying to manipulate it, just to let that energy be there, and keep breathing in it. It's the breath that keeps ushering in new energy that helps transform and transmute the emotions, helps you release what no longer serves you, and then brings in the capacity for feeling more present energies. All right, so you allow the feeling to come up, you feel it, you breathe into it, and then we have some auxiliary techniques that if you want to really move it strongly, we have a technique called toning, and we use movement, both toning and movement, sound and movement, and breath are our 3 basic tools that were given to us by our Creator to help us through most of the emotional and psychological crap that we find ourselves in life. We have tools already built in. The Creator, the universal energies, thought this thing through. We weren't just put here to suffer, but we have all the faculties that we need to manage our lives. We just have to learn how to use them. Siddha has joined, and Shelly Albers has joined. Excellent. To my favorite people. Amanda is saying, do you teach about Ujjayi breath? And I don't really teach it here in this class. I will, since you mention it, I will say that, you know, in the realm of breath work, conscious breathing techniques, there are dozens, if not hundreds of different kinds of techniques. And they all tell you something different. And sometimes they can be diametrically opposed. One can be telling you to breathe hard and fast, other gentle and slow. You know, one can tell you to hold your breath, other tells you not to. One tells you to breathe through your nose, others tell you to breathe through your mouth. What's the right technique? I say there's value in all of them, and the value really comes in understanding what that technique is for. So like Ujjayi breathing. Ujjayi breathing is the breath that's most commonly practiced when you're going through yoga pose sequences. Ujjayi breath is this metered, aspirated breath, meaning it's very even on the in, and on the out you make the sound. I don't know if you can hear that, but the sound is very even going in, even going out, so you keep the breath even. What this does is brings your mind into an equilibrium. This is perfect for yoga when you're all wrapped up like a pretzel and balanced on one hand, because this gives you focus, it gives you intention, and that's important in this yoga scenario. Now, it's not that breath is a very controlled breath, and yoga is really about control of our body, control of our mind, control of our emotions, to ultimately get to our spirit. I know this because, again, I was a monk for 10 years in a yogic order. And by yoga, we're talking about the vast esoteric philosophy of yoga, not just the everyday yoga that we know in the West now, which is postural yoga, doing all the poses. That's a very small part of the overall yoga philosophy. So yoga is really about controlling the senses, controlling the mind, so that we can transcend them and reach that higher conscious state. Now, the technique of breath work that I teach here at Rythmia and that I teach abroad, I've got a seminar coming up in late August. If you want to check me out, R. Christian Minson on Facebook. With this technique, it's a little bit more about letting go of control. In fact, it's a lot about letting go of control. It's about allowing the emotions to bubble up for the sake of integration. And here's my take on this. After being a monk for 10 years, after learning, that we practice these techniques of control, I would say this, that they largely assume that a foundation of emotional balancing work has been done before you start to actually employ these different techniques. And that's not always the case. It's, in fact, I'd say probably less the case than it is the case that people have done this emotional balancing work, and then they can get into these higher techniques of control and command over body, mind, and soul. So it's critical at first to do this house cleaning, get these emotions out, to get yourself into some kind of emotional equilibrium. Otherwise, when you try to control, you're basically, it's like trying to drive a coach with 5 wild horses. They're going crazy, and you don't have any real ability to control them. If you let those horses run and run and run before you hitch them up, and maybe they're worn down, maybe they're now manageable, and you can work them. So that is, Roseanne Jacks. I've always wanted to learn toning. Well, it's pretty easy. I'll teach it to you right now since you're on. And I'm on this too, coming to the end of what I really had to say on this topic. If you got any particular questions, if you want to ask anything, just type it into the bar and I'm happy to answer. But toning is an aspect of sound healing. Sound healing is working with sound, working with vibration, essentially. The idea is we're all vibration, right? Science has even proven we're all energy. Energy is just vibration. Vibration is a certain frequency. Frequency is just a measurement of how fast that vibration is. We all have an inherent vibration. We all vibrate at a specific level. The essence of sound healing is to find vibrations that are in harmony with our vibrations. Some vibrations can help amplify our vibration, sustain us, keep our vibration going longer, or give us more strength. Other vibrations cancel out our vibration. So if we come in contact with them, they nullify our vibration. And so that can cause disorientation, disease, disorders, and ultimately, if that canceling out is strong enough, death, right? So we get back to toning. Toning then is taking sound that you actually create, a vibrational sound, and using it as a way to transform energies that are in you. When we do this breath work, the energy may be either physical or emotional, very intense as you do. As I said, this stuff is bubbling to the surface. It's a very effective process, so you might get a lot of energy. And if you want to deal with that energy, to diminish its intensity in a short period of time, we can employ toning. So what you're doing is really the practice of transforming energy, taking energy from one form and turning it into another form. As science has proven, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. So what we're taking is emotional energy. Emotions are a frequency of energy. Or we're taking physical energy, again, a vibration we're feeling physically, and we're transforming those vibrations into sound vibrations, vibrations of a particular note that's being emanated out of your voice. So you take a deep breath, you feel all that energy coming up, and then you feel it turning into the sound as you make a tone. And you make that tone for as long as you've got air in your lungs, so it's not a but rather a good breath. And you let those emotions out. You let that energy out and let it go through that tone. And if you want to, you can employ movement along with that. What I usually say is you can throw a little temper tantrum in your space. A lot of people don't get to throw temper tantrums these days, or if you do, it's usually out of place. It's not really, there's very few places you're allowed to or encouraged to throw a temper tantrum, and this is one of them. You can tone, do your movement, and it's very effective at shaking off a lot of this energy. You can do that any time of day. You can practice it even independent of breath work. If you're feeling like intense energy, again, either just physical energy, like something's up and you're just a little off, or if you're feeling it emotionally out of balance, try toning and let that emotion out. That's one quick fix if you don't have a lot of time to get into breath work. But otherwise, again, you can use this breath work, and this is, of course, what we do for what we do here at Rythmia. Let's see. I feel like Tibetan bowls heal me. Love to sleep when playing it on the background. Yeah, so Tibetan bowls are a form of sound healing. They send harmonious vibrations, which I have a good friend, Marbella Mandaka, who's a sound healer in the San Diego area, uses the gongs. And gongs, the whole philosophy is these vibrations filter through your body, and they actually structure the water that's in your body. They reharmonize it, and that brings us into a greater state of harmony. So sound bowls, gongs, all those kind of things. Amanda saying, thank you for the insight. Ujjayi used to work great for me and no longer does. Can't wait to get there. Thanks, Amanda. Kevin Peterson joined. Hey, Tone Rangers. Shelley, thanks. Roseanne, thanks. I booked for July. Hopefully you'll be there. I should be here, Roseanne. July, I don't think I'm going anywhere. So remind me that you're on, and definitely come and greet me. say anybody who's on Facebook, on these Facebook Lives who sees me, please come and introduce yourself and say that you saw me. And if you really want to impress me, tell me one thing that you got out of one of these Facebook Lives that really stuck with you and has made a difference in your life. Then I'll be your friend forever, and you'll get anything out of me during your week at Rythmia. Sylvia, you joined. Is that, I can't believe this. Sylvia is our sound engineer here, our media specialist. So welcome, Sylvia. She's probably waiting to see. She wants the office back. And I will be, I think, ending a little bit before the time I told you, Sylvia. So really getting to the point. If you got any other questions, please feel free. Mason Christian is saying, what about imitation singing bowls like on YouTube? I would say, there's a lot of controversy between digital versus analog or real sound. And, the Memorex, the tape company, used to have this thing that, they do cassette tapes, if any of you still know what those are. And they had these cassette tapes which recorded a woman singing an opera note. And, in live, she could sing the opera note, and it could bust a crystal glass. And then the whole commercial is they got her singing on, they got her recorded on this tape, and they're playing this tape and have the glass next to the speaker, and it still bursts. And the whole, the whole shtick is that the tape captures the live quality so perfectly that, it's able to bust the glass. So, I would say live is always better, but then analog recording is next best. That's few and far between these days. And then, of course, digital recording is the next best. If you don't have it live, those sounds still are frequencies, and those frequencies still, by hearing them, by feeling them, putting yourself between two speakers and letting the vibrations go through your body, not just listening to them like on earphones and such, it's still going to be relatively effective. So that's my take on that, Mason. Do they have the same effect? Yeah, so we were just talking about that. I use those indeed. You can even find them on Spotify. The sound is as pure as possible. Just the Tibetan bowls. Yeah, exactly. Sylvia, I really like the title. Wanted to jump in. Can I hear from Carl here from near Dallas? I get toning. I have used it, a milder tone for recovery of mild headaches. Yeah, well, toning can be in all sorts of, there's spectrums of toning. For instance, a scream is a very primal tone. And in fact, sometimes to just scream, there's this whole thing going on in the 70s called primal scream therapy, where you just go out there and you just let out the most blood-curdling scream you can as a way to dislodge emotion. And sometimes that's, to me, I see that as sometimes an extreme measure. If you got this huge boulder of emotions trying to get out and it won't move, and then that primal scream sort of knocks something out, and finally the boulder starts to move. But I feel like a primal scream still keeps you in sort of the negativity of that emotion, if you will. Once you've got the energy moving, we want to turn it into a more sonorous sound, versus and that's actually going to reinforce, good, positive vibrations that are going to help heal that now moving energy. You can do toning. Toning doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be any particular note, though there is a whole science there. So it can be quieter. You can be focused and directive of it. On the other side of the spectrum, singing is a form of toning, right? Singing is a very specialized form of toning. And I would say that's one of the reasons why singing activates our emotions so much, besides the lyrics and the ideas that they bring. but there is, through the notes and the combination of that, it is affecting us. It's stirring up emotion within us because those frequencies are connecting with us. So I know somebody who dissolved a kidney stone with toning. That's amazing, Roseanne. I'd love to hear more about that. Mason, I think you're right. I feel that totally. Thanks, Christian. You look great, by the way. Right on. Looking good, feeling good. 51 years old as of April 9th. So Rythmia is doing me well. So is breathing. So is the stem cell offering that we have here, which I partook of in January. You want to know more about that, send me a message. But thank you, Mason. Tim joined. Hey there. Purell, here's one of my most often used for group to listen to. So that's a link to some of the sound healing stuff. Thanks there. And I'll tell you the story in July. Roseanne, okay, that's of the kidney stone dissolve. Okay, perfect. And Natalie, hi from Ontario. Love to talk. Beautiful. Love that you're on. And really, my final words here are really to say, what if you're able to practice this process for just 5 minutes a day? Nice full breath, relaxed, connected breath, use that toning whenever energy comes up. Just watch, if you could just do this for 5 minutes a day, how the energy in your life starts to balance. It's like the edges get softer. You don't go to these feel extremes, like emotions are out of control, and then you're rejecting them, and then they're out of control, and it's back and forth. It kind of smooths out the bumps and ideally makes them less volatile. Now, a lot of people think, well, that's where all the excitement is in life, and I'd say that from a spiritual perspective, we're really learning how to transcend the waves of life and actually operate in a much higher frequency altogether. And this is, to get to that higher frequency, your emotions, once again, have to be in balance. This brings us back to the whole topic of why emotional balancing. So the emotions are in balance. What might seem like, we're cutting the extremes of joy and pleasure and all that kind of stuff, we're actually bringing ourselves in balance so that we can transcend that perspective and come to a whole higher concept and experience of what joy and happiness means on that spiritual level. And that's where we tune in with our intuitive insights. We tune in with our higher self. It's a balance of that emotion, a balance of our rationality, and that is what it means to be a balanced and whole spiritual being. So with that, Jenny Greer joined just in time for me to say adios. Hopefully you'll catch the recording shortly after this. Regis, hello to you. And thank you all for being on. If you want to carry on the conversation in any way, shape, or form, if anything I said you want to follow up on, coming to Rythmia, my seminar, toning, any of this kind of stuff, you can friend me on Facebook here, R Christian Minson, the letter R Christian Minson. If you do that, always add a message, and that will get me to accept your friend request. If you don't send a message, I will likely not accept that friend request, or it will take a long time to get around to it. So just let me know that you saw me on Facebook Live, or you had this question, or whatever it is. So, like anything, if you want to be a friend, wouldn't you say, hey, will you be my friend, rather than just say, this is me, will you be my friend? And it's like, who are you? That's my take on this whole digital friending thing. Anyway, with that, thanks to Dave and Purell, and thanks for your input. Thanks for the great questions. If another thing you can message me about is if you have topics. I've got some topics coming up that were direct suggestions. I think managing expectation is one, and Michelle Dixon, if you're out there, she suggested that, and then one that suggested. I can't remember right off my top of my head, but that's coming up in this month too. So I do listen to you guys, and I do want to give you what you need. And just remember, everything that I talk about gives a perspective on a well-rounded life. You come to Rythmia, you're here to work on stuff that's in the way of you having a well-rounded and balanced life. And you're gonna expunge a lot of junk. You're gonna get in touch with a lot of inspiration and what's what you're truly about. You're gonna leave with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of clarity. But that enthusiasm and clarity are going to be best served in the long term if you keep your life in balance. And again, this is why the breath work is so important to maintain as you go through life. As long as you're breathing, you should be practicing breath work to help manage those emotions, manage those states of being, and feel more connected to that higher self. So with that, just looking in, thanks for sharing. I'm interested in understanding more. So keep tuning in there, Carl, or get to Rythmia, or friend me on Facebook. Gord, great man. Can't wait to hear about your story tomorrow on I Got My Miracle. So tune into that one, all you guys out there. And hello, Layla, is it? Or Lala. And until next time, our Christian Minson signing off, saying namaste, and go out there, breathe, and do great things. See you next week. Adios.